Hello, Peter4789/Sirus here, and welcome to my review of Odin Sphere Leifthrasir. I probably mispronounced that horribly, and I apologize. Wow, it's been quite a while since I made a video review. But what a game to return to review after my long hiatus. Now, having played and beaten both Muramasa, the Demon Blade, and Dragon's Crown, I would say I was pretty interested in Odin Sphere since those games have been developed by the same studio, as well as people praising Odin Sphere as well. But I never really had the chance to actually play it till they actually remade it / remastered it for the PS4 / Vita. I actually got it as a birthday present as well, which was a pleasant surprise to say the least. Now, I do know that the original Odin Sphere and the PS4 / Vita remake of the game have quite a few stark differences with each other, that they can be considered different games in the gameplay department. But having not really played much with the original version of the game, I don't really feel fair to really comment on it. I'll mostly be discussing my thoughts on Refined Mode, the PS4 / Vita modification and addition that they brought to Odin Sphere, and how they hold up. Though you can gain access to the original PS2 version of the game Leifthrasir, you just have to select classic mode on the menu. Now, without further ado, let's start this review. Odin Sphere Leifthrasir is a side-scrolling action RPG that is developed by Vanillaware and published by Atlus.
I'll catch that witch and make her spill her guts about that cauldron. If she plays dumb, her head will
Now let's talk about the visuals of the game. Visually, this game is gorgeous. The 2D sprite work and environmental designs are really breathtaking, from the character sprite work of each individual character in the game being well detailed and are animated extremely well. The over-the-top special effects being a spectacle to watch from the various cipher skills that each playable character can use, as well as the boss attacks. And the environment is pleasing, with there being a variety of environment you'll be traversing, from the cold surroundings of Horn Mountain to the dreaded underworld, that are interesting to see, with the overall art style of the game being a marvel to witness as well, with the art style having strong influence on Norse mythology, as well as drawing in from other European mythologies as inspiration. All in all, the game is a very pretty game to see, especially in motion with the top-notch sprite work. The sound department is also very strong in the game, with the soundtrack being a pleasure to listen to, with having a very strong soundtrack overall, from the very soothing and dramatic orchestrating tracks that is accompanied with various vocals, to the various environmental pieces that plays in each level that does match the feeling of each place. Overall, the soundtrack and how it's used is very well done. The voice acting is also really good. I still think it uses the old voice actors from the original game, but nothing less. It's extremely well done, with the performance of each character being on point pretty much. There are some odd choices, like some of the voices for the MC dwarfs and one of the Puka chefs in the Puka village, but it's an overall well done dub. Now let's talk about the story of Odin Sphere. The story basically takes place on the continent of Arion, which is split into the various kingdoms that are vying against each other over the crystallization cauldron, a powerful device that is able to create powerful crystals using phosons, which is basically the life essence in this universe. There is also an ancient prophecy depicting the world's end, which might be important in the story. Anyway, you play through the game as 5 different characters that are embroiled in a conflict with different perspectives on different sides, from Gwendolyn, the strong and brave warrior princess of Novia, who is also looking for her father's approval, Mercedes, the carefree and naive princess of Ringford, who is currently at war with Novia over the crystallization cauldron, Cornelius, the courageous and romantic at heart prince of Titania, who has been mysteriously cursed to being a puka for some unknown reason and thrown into the netherworld, the broody Shadow Knight Oswald, and the mysterious Velvet. To be more precise, you'll be playing as Alice, who will be reading through the exploits of these characters. The story overall is well done. I would say the strength of the story is the cast of characters. Each of the main cast of characters that you control each have a distinctive personality that is likable, and you really do understand the struggle that they face and how they got into their personal struggles, which really gets you invested into what's going to happen next, especially with the character development that you see throughout the story, as well as the relationship between certain characters developed. You really get why Gwendolyn is so determined to win her father's approval, and see how that desire at its core can lead her to develop feelings for a certain someone later on in the story. You understand why he also cherishes his loved one so much at the end of his story, just based on what happened on the story. You understand why Cornelius have trepidations about telling his love about his situation, and etc. The writing of the character and the personal journey that they each take is written really well. Some character stories are admittedly better than some others, but I say that each one is good by themselves, and overall, Odin Sphere has a rather touching love story when you see the journey of the characters as you go through each character book. The only con to the story I would say is that the overlying plot of the game, in terms of the story between the various nations of Arion fighting for the cauldron, it's not really well developed for the most part. It really only comes engaging at the end, which is a rather great ending, but throughout most of the game you are mostly going to be invested in each character's journey rather than seeing how these various armies maneuver against each other. Which is good as the focus is on the characters. I just saying don't expect to have like a deep understanding of each nation is moving against each other in order to get the cauldron. But I will admit that it is fun to try to piece together how each event in the game goes in chronological order, since with how the story is told, if you going through each character book, not every character story happens after one character ends. It's interwoven, and it's fun to see how each character action in one book was a cause and effect of another significant event in another, or see which one goes in chronological order. And there is a way to view the chronological order of events that happens in the archive section, which is nice. The overall world of Arion in terms of lore is also pretty typical. There's some interesting lore here and there, but the world is mostly standard for the type of setting that the game got, in terms of lore. Now let's talk about Odin Sphere Leifthrasir gameplay. Odin Sphere Leifthrasir plays like a side-scrolling action RPG, akin to Muramasa the Demon Blade and Dragon's Crown, with you playing through various levels to progress the game, with there being story at the start and end of each level, with you playing as various characters, with you being able to choose which characters to use when you select which book you want Atlus to read. Let's first talk about the structure of the game. Like I said before, you'd be playing as Atlus, initially picking which character books to go through, like a character select screen of sorts, though you only have access to Gwendolyn book, and then Cornelius, Mercedes, Oswald, and lastly Velvet, with there being an ending book. After selecting the character, you'll be able to go to a map where you'll be able to select each individual level, where you have to travel from point A to point B, killing enemies, getting certain items to unlock doors to get to point B, with there being plenty of optional areas to traverse to for some extra items, as well as ability crystals or prisms, which will allow you to unlock either passive abilities or new battle moves that your character can gain access to, which does make traveling through these optional areas to be worth it. Though these optional areas are paired up with pretty tough foes, either with there being like god level enemies or with there being some optional bosses, with you being able to see how tough they are by looking at the map and seeing how many stars that area is worth. Overall, the structure of Odin Sphere is typical if not formulaic. There are not many issues on the surface, it works well for the type of game that's going for, but the main issue to the structure of the game, and it's a pretty big one, is that there's not much stage variety as you go through all 5 characters. Once you go through the 2 character stories, which are basically Gwendolyn and Cornelius, you basically see all the stage variety that the game had to offer, more or less, with all the enemies in those stages remaining the same as you go through the other character stories. As was most of the bosses you see in those stages being recurring bosses, with there being a few new ones here and there, and it can overall feel very samey as you progress the game, which can hamper the enjoyment of the game for some, since there's really nothing new being introduced in the game essentially after the first 2 character stories in terms of different stages or different enemies overall. It's just really the same enemies you see if you see the same stage in one character story in another character story. Now, the feeling of repetitiveness is mitigated somewhat by each character's unique playstyle, but the lack of stage variety does hurt the game. Now let's get to the combat system of Odin Sphere Leifthrasir. Odin Sphere Leifthrasir combat, like I said before, plays like a 2D side-scrolling hack-and-slash combo-centric game, for the most part, with you being able to control up to 5 characters in the game as you progress the story, with them having a variety of playstyles, from Gwendolyn being a very balanced fighter all around, with her having a peripheral of ice abilities to lock and slow her opponents down, Cornelius being a nimble and swift fighter, as well as having an emphasis on stun magic to daze his opponents in place, as well as having emphasis on aerial attacks, Mercedes flying around and using her long range attack with her crossbows, with her level basically playing like a bullet hell game. And then there's Oswald, who's a more grounded character compared to Gwendolyn and Cornelius in terms of his movesets, but there is a focus on building and using his berserker meter to deal out a ton of damage. And lastly, there is Velvet, who uses her chain as her weapon, allows her to strike from a good distance, being, well, in terms of being a melee combatant, and she has a variety of fire spells at her disposal to allow her to deal relatively good damage, as well as some form of crowd control. These characters play pretty differently from each other, but even then, how they control is still relatively the same, with you being able to do a normal basic attack, block, dodge, jump, and do a variety of special attacks, with a physical special attack that each character have at under disposal uses the power meter, with the meter slowly recovering as time goes on, and the magical special attacks uses the cipher meter, which refills as you defeat enemies and absorb their phosons. And you can set the variety of these special skills to certain button combinations so you can use them fluidly in battle without having to pause the game to try to select a particular skill. You can also use various items in combat, well, mostly potions and food, but you can get potions that sets off a whirlwind or an explosion to restore the potions, as well as eating food to restore your health. Though do note that using food locks you in a very long animation, so it's not really recommended when you're in the heat of battle. Overall, the combat is really well done. It's fast paced, fluid, there's fun to be had in a variety of playstyles, with each character being fun and interesting to learn as you go through the game, as well as each character having a good range of skills to learn and use as you go through the game, which does give a good sense of progression. Each character playstyle is fun to use. The combat system doesn't really break new grounds in how you play the game, and feel very similar to Muramasa and Dragon's Crown, but it's done extremely well, in that it feels very satisfying to learn these character playstyles, see which ability you gain will work with your particular playstyle, and see which ability works well in tandem with each other to basically decimate the various mooks on the battlefield. I also like how you can assign certain characters to various buttons, which is nice. In the end, the combat is a blast to go through. The only problem to combat is, yet again, lack of stage variety, which will face you off the same enemy over and over again once you go through a similar stage in the other character stories. Another issue I have is sort of the same issue I have with Muramasa, and that's the block button and the charge button is like this on the same button. Albeit you have to hold the button along with the down button to do a charge, while just holding it will let you block, but I still feel it can mess some people up at times in a fight. Now I'll talk briefly about the alchemy system in Odin Sphere Leifthrasir. You'll basically be able to make various potions by having empty vial as well as a mangadora, which are unique enemies that hide in the ground, with you being able to collect them by basically hitting them once you get them off the ground. With there being a variety of mangadora to collect, with the type of mangadora you put in the vial will determine what potion you will make. You can also strengthen a potion by combining a potion with another one, with the first potion you select being the one you're strengthening as well you being able to change a pre-existing potion by combining it with a particular Megandora. There are also alchemy recipes you can collect in the game as well. Overall, the alchemy system is simple to use and fairly easy to grasp, but still worth to use with how useful potions are, which makes it a nice addition to the game. And now let's talk about the leveling / progression system that the game employs. The game has a rather traditional leveling system, with you being able to gain experience through battle, as well as eating food. Where your main source of gaining experience will be getting food, which is probably not typical, but there you go. And you'll be able to get food by buying them from the Puka village by collecting special coins as you go through the game, as well as bringing ingredients to Mario's chef, either from battle, growing the ingredients yourself using phosons, or buying them from merchants. There's also a skill system that the game employs that allow you to see all the different abilities you can gain access to, and even tells you how to unlock them, with you being able to upgrade these abilities once you gain access to them, from passive abilities to combat specific skills. And you basically upgrade them using phosons. So you do have to be wary if you want to use phosons to grow certain ingredients for food, or you want to use it to upgrade your skills. Overall, the progression system in Odin Sphere Leifthrasir works well. You do feel significantly stronger either by leveling up through just battling or eating food, or by upgrading the various skills at your disposal, which does give a good feeling of progression as you go through the game. Overall, Odin Sphere Leifthrasir is a ton of fun to play through. The changes in the remake really does make it a lot of fun for both old players to come back to, as well as being welcoming to newcomers, with it having a compelling story with good characters, the combat system being a lot of fun to play through with how fast paced and fluid the combat is, as well as how fun and varied each character playstyle is. The game overall is a very well made game. Now there are some flaws to the game, with the most defining one being the lack of stage variety, but it's still a really good game, and I really do recommend people try it out.